Hey, I am here in the beautiful Otissaga Hotel with my good friend Brian Kenny of MLB Network. And I know it kind of looks like we're at the Masters, but we're really here in Cooperstown for the Hall of Fame election. Brian, you can vouch for the fact we're in Cooperstown, correct?
Yes, and I'm sorry. I apologize. My Basset Hound hasn't arrived. Otherwise, we'd have the fireplace, Basset right here. Have the Jayson Stark Christmas special. That'd be nice.
We thought about trying out the fireplace, but no good could come of that outside of a little scenery here on the podcast.
Cooperstown Fire Department would be very upset. Right. We tried doing that in this old hotel.
Right. So let's not digress. Let's talk a little bit about Cooperstown and the Hall of Fame. You should know that Brian Kenny is actually the president of the Cooperstown Chamber of Commerce. Nobody loves Cooperstown as much as you, Brian. How did you come to develop this reverence for Cooperstown, New York?
It's a combination of things. I used to come here a lot. I grew up on Long Island. My father would take me up here, and we would vacation all around New York State. Wow. You know, my father and my mother with my sister, like we vacation, we camped, believe it or not. When camping was a thing, we didn't glamp, we camped, and we would camp around places, and then occasionally we'd stay at places, say these little motels, and we used to come up here. I have pictures of me when I'm 8 years old. I think I'm standing in front of Stan Musial's locker with my glove. Like I brought my glove, you know, in case, you know, a game broke out somewhere in the Hall of Fame. So I've been coming to the Hall of Fame since I was a little boy.
Wow.
And then I worked as a local sportscaster at Channel 62, WTZA TV in Kingston, which is only about an hour and a half from here. So I used to come up here. I come up here on weekends. Sometimes I come up here with my dad when my dad was alive, and we came up and we had father-son weekends here. And then I had father-son weekends with my kids, you know, with my boys. And my wife and I started coming up here because we had 5 kids. You know, you have 3, 4, and 5, but we had so many kids that when you make trips, you can't go that far away. So like we couldn't go to Aruba and leave my parents with 5 kids. They refused outright. Said, no, you have too many kids. But we could come to Kingston and be within striking distance if one of the kids got a cold or something like that. So we've been coming here for years. My oldest daughter got married here at the Otissaga. So we've got it pretty complete. I've always loved history. I'll wrap this up. I've always loved baseball history. Coming here was always a great trip just to soak in the baseball history. So it just made so much sense. Plus, the village is beautiful. The countryside is beautiful. So there's 2 things working. There's baseball and there's the village itself.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir. As you know, me, my wife Lisa, our whole family, we have a reverence for Cooperstown. And the year of my induction weekend, I mean, we had 100 friends and family come here, and we told all those people, this place is magical. It's the Magic Kingdom. And they all fell in love with it because you can't help it. But this is not a week when you're chilling or I'm chilling. This is Hall of Fame election week. We're doing MLB Now daily, 2 p.m. Eastern, from the Hall of Fame. And then we'll be part of the big Hall of Fame election special on Tuesday night, starting at 6 p.m., correct?
Right. We'll have, and then we're doing the official announcement with Josh Rowich, as we've done here. We used to do this in our studios. We would have Jeff Idelson, who's then president of the Hall of Fame, come down and make the announcement. And then I forget if it was pandemic related that we just thought, well, they couldn't travel. They didn't say it made no sense to go to New York. And so we did it up here. And then once we did it up here, it was like, how come we're not coming up here every year? And then a year later, it was like, okay, let me start doing MLB Now from here. And then 2 years later, hey, Jayson, what are you doing in the winter? You're not that busy. Why don't you come up here? You know, and so we're up here. John Morosi is up here. And now we're doing hours and hours of shows, which we can do when we're here at the Hall.
I mean, we just finished recording we did it live. We're doing an MLB Now show from the Plaque Gallery, the coolest studio in history. But you know, you should let people know, Brian, what you've been doing since you got here, because you've been a busy human.
Yeah, I don't know. This is like, it's what I like to do. It's what you like to do. You and I have been going over our ballots and going over Hall of Fame. Comparative analysis is what we like to do with baseball. We've been doing it for 25 years since we first started working together at ESPN. And we would come on. I like the highest praise I've ever gotten is from you and Tim Kirkchin, who have said that, like, I know before I come on your show, like, I better do my homework because I've got to defend my ballot to you. I was just going
to bring this up.
I always like that.
Yep. I don't remember what year this was, but it really is probably 20 years ago. Me telling you on the air, when I do my ballot, I literally think to myself, how am I going to defend this ballot to Brian Canny? And I know that sounds crazy to people out there, but let me explain what that's all about. This is, Brian is somebody who challenges us to think and to think through every name we check and every name that we don't check, and to be able to explain to each other and to you why we think what we think, why we vote how we vote. Now, Brian doesn't have a vote. I'm sorry about that. If it was up to me, I'd give you a vote, but it's not up to me. But when I first told you that when I fill out my ballot, I'm actually thinking about you. What went through your head?
Well, no, that's the highest praise I could get, because I know you work hard at it.
I do.
And I know, look, again, you and Tim don't have to explain anything to me, but we have good sparring. But look, we have these all internal dialogues too, where we're battling. And look, we could go back and forth on Andruw Jones, on Jimmy Rollins. There's no perfect answer, just as it is with the Veterans Committee. I've evolved in my thinking. You know, again, I've gone from one place to another. Back then, in ye olden times, remember, very few people had any objective methodology. And if you recall, most of your brethren, not you, not Tim, you know, not Tom Verducci, you know, not Ken Rosenthal, not Joel Sherman, but a lot of writers out there, it was the dominant, you know, column that would be written, what would be something along the lines of, if I have to think about it, if I have to work at it, the answer is no. And it's like, no, you should work on it a little bit. And there were people out there that would be, you know, saying, wait, take a closer look at, like, Ron Santo. Take a closer look at some of these players that are not getting, like, we need to do a better job of doing comparative analysis, sabermetrics, which was the, you know, again, on the rise then, of just taking into account the run scoring environment. Like a simple thing like that a 300 batting average in 1930 was not the same as 1968. And many of the players that we would advocate for were guys who were in a low run scoring environment. It was like, who were hitting 19 home runs and had 90 RBIs. And it's like, that's not that good. No, actually it was great, depending on the year. Yes. So anyway, I thought, I love doing the sparring, you know, with you. And I know you really work at it. So just like explain it, have a reason. I think most voters now seem to do that and have reasons. And I've swung back to where, all right, enough vote shaming. I'm an original vote shamer. But now that, like, shaming is the national pastime, you know, in social media, I'm like, all right, enough of that. And I like when someone has what I call the anomalous pick. Have an anomalous pick. Have someone out of left field that you go, I like this guy. And so when I hear Harold Reynolds or Matt Viscursion now say, I like Jimmy Rollins, I don't rip them, say, what's his war? Look at his career war, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, good. There's something that you're recognizing in Jimmy Rollins' career in his game that makes you think he's a Hall of Famer. Maybe we lack the language to use that. So I've swung. But back in the old times, I was like, you have a reason for this. And it's like, and why would you have this? I don't think I ripped you that much, but I pushed back.
No, but you challenged.
A little. Yes.
I don't mind the challenge. See, I love the debate when it's a thoughtful debate and we're each actually listening. Like the climate of the Twitter debate, it's normally that enjoyable. I wrote my ballot column on the Athletic. I think it posted last Friday, and a friend of mine texted me immediately and said, "Your mentions seem fun." and my response was to say, "You know what we call the day when I reveal my ballot? A day to not check my mentions."
Yeah, don't go there.
But, you know, I do see every once in a while they pop up as alerts. And I'm like, I learn how little I know about baseball.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Like that.
Well, it's a bad, you know, the medium is the message was, you know, the old saying from Marshall McLuhan, and it rings true in a lot of ways. And I think social media and Twitter specifically, it's bad technology for communicating. And it can be great and it can be terrible, but people take shots and you have to jab. It's a jab. And then you wait. And here he is again. I see a bit of weakness in his argument. I'm going to attack that. Or he left me a trigger word. I'm going to attack that. As opposed to if you were like, hey, we're going to take your calls right now on your Hall of Fame ballot. Someone might say, Jayson, you're way off. But by the time you're done speaking, you'd reach some common ground and some understanding. on Twitter, you don't do that. So you're an idiot. And that's what comes out. And again, I look at it now, have a reason for what you're thinking. As opposed to MVP voting, which again, I think that can be done with some degree of certainty. It can be done with some degree of specific study. Hall of Fame is a nebulous sort of line.
Really
is he above the line? Is he below the line? So nobody's an idiot if you don't have somebody. Nobody's right or wrong. I disagree with those who are, like just performance only, like Mark Feinsand. We had him on the show today. I was like, you have a terrible ballot. Now, I just don't like his ballot.
Right, but you weren't vote shaming.
I'm not on vote shaming.
Mentioning that.
Plus,
so people would know.
If you say, and Mark Feinsand is saying, I am performance only. If Major League Baseball let those guys on the field and they performed, and I think it's great, I'm going to vote for them. Completely legitimate. I disagree with it, but it's completely legitimate.
Right. Well, we'll get into the vote and non-vote of mine that created the most furor, but let's just look at what we think is about to happen Tuesday night. It looks like we're going to be teetering on that tightrope of electing Scott Rolen, possibly electing Todd Helton, or electing nobody. What's your guess?
The most likely scenario is Rolen and Helton fall just short. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm hoping that there will be some sort of surge for people who are looking at the ballot that are thinking, hey, again, I think there was a lot of psychological weight with Bonds, Clemens, Sosa, Schilling, and for different reasons with Schilling. But there was just it absorbed a lot of energy. It absorbed your attention. You're just looking at it. You have to figure it out. So now that those guys are clear, I think people will have a fresh look. And I think people evolve in their thinking. Not everybody has the same vote all the time. I'm with you. I think you said, once I vote yes, I've made my decision. Agreed. But I've been on the fence with guys where later I'll say, you know what, I'm fine with him. Or I've done more study and I've figured some more things out. And I think it would be good to get him in. And I think you can change your vote. It's not like either he is or he isn't. I think that's an ignorant stance. Either he is or he isn't. No, not true. We're choosing, do we want to honor somebody? Do we want to make somebody salesman of the year, policeman of the year, baseball player of the year, grant them some sort of, meritorious service award? It's a nebulous thing. So there's no right or wrong, but just have a reason for it. And I think people do evolve. And when there's a cleared up ballot, I'm hoping enough people will look at it and say, I don't know if they do this, but know that next year, Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Chase Utley hit the ballot. They're all strong candidates. I think Beltre gets in. The other two, I think should get in, but they're strong at the very least. The next year, Ichiro and CC Sabathia, and some other strong guys like Dustin Pedroia, a couple of strong guys who will get some votes. And I think if you're looking at that, this is the year. Like, not as, Mad Dog said to me, do you think guys are thinking, hey, I want a guy at the ceremony this year. I don't want Fred McGriff standing by himself. I don't want to think that way, but there's something to it. Like, hey, why don't we get the guy in now instead of having a group of 6 down the line? I think it makes sense this year.
Yeah. I've been a voter for a long time. And I do think when you get to a year like this, if the alternative is let's elect somebody or let's elect nobody, my inclination is I would really like to see somebody get elected. And, just looking at the way the Hall of Fame tracker has reflected how certain candidates are surging, but Scott Rolen really hasn't surged that much. It feels to me like that mentality didn't happen so much in his case. I think there are other forces at work, but why would that be? You're looking at this from afar. Why would it be that the brethren, the writers, wouldn't have that urge to elect somebody when Scott Rolen was so close, 47 votes away?
Yes, and he kind of checks most boxes, not all boxes, right? Who does? Mike Schmidt does. Great. Good.
Chipper was pretty easy.
Chipper's pretty good. George Brett was kind of easy. Eddie Matthews, I think back in the day was probably pretty easy for people, but I don't know. You saw my essay today. It's not just that he has a 70 WAR. It's not just that he's 9th in WAR at his position. I showed what the all ninth war team was, right?
That was
at every
great.
position, ninth war. I think it's Willie McCovey, Willie Stargell, Pee Wee Reese, Roberto Alomar, Tony Gwynn. It's pretty strong, right? You get the sense that's a whole. It's literally a Hall of Fame team, except for Maurer and for who are we talking about? I blanked out already. I'm gonna have too many names in my head. And for Rolen, right? So it's literally, and Rolen is on the ballot, and Maurer hits next year. So it's this team where you have, should the top 10 at each position get into the Hall of Fame? Essentially, yes, is the answer. And he had all these years of 31 homers, 110 RBIs. He had these back of the baseball card numbers that I thought these guys, that again, the guys who were like from another era that never got hip to total baseball or read Bill James or anything. It's like, I don't know, 34 homers, 124 RBIs by a third baseman. Oh, you tell me. He has a bunch of those years.
And, it's not like he did it for invisible teams. The Phillies were no good when he was there. I can vouch for that. But he played on Cardinals teams. One of them won the World Series. Another one won 105 games and lost the World Series to the Red Sox. But he played some amazing baseball for good teams. And I can tell you, as somebody who covered him in Philadelphia, I mean, he arrived in Philadelphia at 21 years old, and watching him, I thought, I've never seen anything like this. I saw Mike Schmidt play. I'd never seen the position played the way Scott Rolen played it. I wrote in my column that he was like a combo platter of Brooks Robinson meets Lawrence Taylor. Because he just had this ferocity about the way he played the position. If it was hit anywhere on the left side of the infield, he was sure he was going to catch it. He'd run over the grounds crew. The shortstop didn't matter. And then he had this remarkable arm where sitting down, one knee, fading away, he could throw you out. And it was dazzling to watch. I mean, I know it wasn't this age, but games were on TV then. We have highlights that we can show people.
It's cable TV.
And then, I thought this to myself, tell me what you think. I think if he had played in the age of StatCast, where we could really measure precisely the amount of ground he covered and the balls he turned into outs that other third basemen didn't, I think it would have helped Scott Rolen.
Yeah, I think so too. He had new defensive metrics. You've had defense now, because now we can absolutely look at Nolan Arenado, Manny Machado, whoever it is at third base, and say, wow, look at this guy. It's not just that, well, he's really good or he's excellent. It's like he's plus 21. Like that's when you put a number to something, it changes your thought on it. And absolutely, if he had some of these outrageous defensive metrics, like the way we think of Arenado now, you're like, well, no, he's not just plus, he's elite. It's beyond that. And Arenado was viewed that way. I mean, Rolen was viewed that way.
Yeah, I think he's really a cross between Nolan Arenado and Adrian Beltran. I mean, Arenado in the sense that like watching them both play third base is a very similar experience. And Beltran, because he was steady, the way Scott Rolen was steady offensively. And, I've used this stat a bunch of times, but Scott Rolen had 8 seasons with a Gold Glove and an OPS 20% above league average or more. The only third baseman in history who had more than that was Mike Schmidt. I mean, he's got more than Arenado has of seasons like that. I just think he was a better offensive player than people remember, and an incredible base runner, and a leader and a winner, very strong-minded guy. So I think he's easy for you and me, but I don't think he gets elected this week. All right.
That'd be a shame.
It would be a shame. Yeah. But now that leads into the furor. Listed on Twitter was my ballot, just the names. There was a link to my column. Nobody wanted to get that far. They just wanted to look at those names.
Right. And that would take work to actually read your column.
Yeah, we can't ask that.
Yeah, no.
All right. So on the list, Scott Rolen. Not on the list, Andruw Jones. The Andruw Jones fan club cannot comprehend this.
Yeah.
Here's what I find interesting about it. Like, I'll be happy to defend this in a minute, but just because the case for 2 players starts with the glove doesn't mean they have the same
No,
case.
right, of course.
Therefore, I need to vote for
I-
both of them.
I'm puzzled at all because you tell me now, if I had my mythical ballot, if I had a vote, I have Andruw Jones on it. That you don't, you tell me you don't. It's not like I don't get it. How could you be thinking what you think? I know exactly what you're thinking. I don't know precisely what you're thinking. I know vaguely what you're thinking. He's on the border. It's like I don't know, Maury Wills, Minnie Mignoso, Ken Boyer. Like you could make a case, but if you're thinking not quite, makes sense. He had a 10-year career of a great glove. A lot of guys who have a great 6-8 years. I'm a peak guy, but they have the great bat. He didn't have a great bat. He had a good enough bat and he had a great glove, but it's a different sort of career. And he did fall off a cliff and he wasn't even a good defensive player at that point. And perhaps the metrics do overrate him a bit. I think, again, I watched him play through those years. I thought he was very good. I did not get the same feeling. I'm not saying this is a completely accurate thing. Did not get the same feeling I did when I was watching Paul Blair, for example, who was a monster in center field. Or think of the Kansas City Royals during their championship run, where it was Lorenzo Cain and Alex Gordon, and the ball never quite hit grass. Like there was a 2-year run where and you're watching playoffs and you're like, the ball doesn't seem to fall into the outfield at all with these guys. I didn't get that sense, but I know Jones, it's not a phantom metric either. He did cover a ton of ground. But so I'm voting yes, because he hits enough things that I like with the outrageous defensive metrics, with a center fielder. I think we jobbed center fielders in our Hall of Fame voting.
No doubt.
Edmonds, Bernie, Lofton. What happened?
We've elected 2 and 4
Yeah,
years.
ridiculous. I think Beltran was the guy who was going to be, finally getting that combo platter vote of, oh, okay, you don't have to hit quite like Mickey Mantle because he was the greatest ever, but we can accept a little lesser offense. But I understand why you don't. I don't think you're crazy, but it brings to mind the pattern that we've had recently. And actually, I have an essay on this for MLB Now on Tuesday that, think about it, McGriff and Jeff Kent started about the same level as Rolen, as Messina, Edgar Martinez, Tim Raines, the sabermetric darlings. And these are our guys. We're the sabermetric guys. We love sabermetric darlings. I create sabermetric darlings. And these guys are not. And they never got the same traction. Jeff Kent, Fred McGriff just kind of languished. And isn't it kind of obvious that now that McGriff is a Hall of Famer, it's kind of obvious Jeff Kent is a Hall of Famer. It's kind of obvious. So yeah, these guys are on the border, and yet it gets into this vote shaming where Larry Walker made these huge leaps, and God bless him, but a lot of it was the old writers, newspapers are dying, you're getting labeled as a dinosaur, and it's evolve or die. And everyone suddenly watched Moneyball and thought, I don't want to die. I'd like to evolve. I'll evolve. I'll do whatever you people want. Fine with me. And it's eventually like, oh, I give. Again, what's fashionable and what's unfashionable. That's a John Thorne thing that I picked up. Because what is in fashion?
That's a
it's
great
not
point.
that you have to, right? It's fashionable now to not want to punish guys who have used PEDs. It used to be fashionable to punish them. Now it is not fashionable. So now if you went out and said, hey, you know what? Everyone was good with steroids. I'm good with the guys who did steroids. You'd get applause. Like it just is. It's more fashionable. So Andruw Jones right now with the Sabre set and Braves fans, it's fashionable, and you're picking something that's unfashionable, defensible, unfashionable.
Yeah, it's very easy to go along with just ride the tide and follow the crowd as the vote totals start to climb. And hey, the Andruw Jones, if he ever makes it, the climb would be historic. He was getting 32, 33 votes his first 2 years.
And I'm all for changing it to if you think, hey, so what the guy vote total was, Burt Blyleven, wherever, the guys who are like, hey, wait a second, you got to
I've evolved on guys like that.
Yeah.
And I did try to make the point when I wrote my column that I don't pretend I know it all. I don't pretend I've seen it all. I enjoy the dialogue with smart people. And I have had a lot of that dialogue with Andruw Jones. And so let me just explain a little bit my thinking, if any Braves fans are listening this far in. Offensively, I don't see a guy who is as good as 430 whatever homers makes him look. He would have the lowest batting average of any outfitter in the Hall of Fame and the second lowest at any position. Okay, that's a guy who needs help offensively. He had a 111 OPS plus for his career would be third lowest of any outfielder. So he would need remarkable defense, right? Just based on that.
Right.
You mentioned the cliff. Age 30. After age 30, this guy didn't, and he played 5 more years and didn't have 5 wins above replacement combined. He would have the fewest wins above replacement from age 30 on of any Hall of Fame outfielder. So again, you don't need just great defense. You need historically great defense.
Right.
And there are metrics that make it feel like that's what Andruw Jones was. The greatest ever, better than Mays. I'm that guy who for a while now has said, I'm not sure that's what he was. And, you know, so I've been reading the work and been in touch with this guy named Chris Dial, he's the other real contrarian on Andruw Jones' defense, who has argued, if you really look at this, look, for 3-4 years, he was the best we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, he began to gain weight. He began to lose sprint speed. A lot of the metrics are dependent on the fact that in that outfield with guys like Ryan Klesko playing in the corners, you know, he was allowed to catch every soft fly ball to left center, every pop-up that the shortstop or the second baseman catch on most teams. And it padded his numbers to the point where the Chris Dial's theory is he clearly deserved only 3 or 4 of those Gold Gloves. And even if you say, well, there are variables that, you know, we're taking into account who else was in the league, nowhere close to 10. And I know other people who think this. I've been talking to them ever since I wrote my Stark Truth book. And so I've tried hard to vote for Andruw Jones. I'm just not quite there, because if there's even a question about whether his period of defensive dominance was as long as we want to make it seem to be, I don't think he has anything else, or not enough beside the glove,
right,
to motivate me to vote for him. But if by saying that, can you tell I thought about it a little bit?
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're in the weeds. Like it's not, you're not glossing over, you're getting deep into it. And there is something to, again, back in the old days, anecdotal notes were like ruled the day. Well, now you're starting with the data, and then you're going to anecdotes, and you're going into, because you can always find, oh, I talked to one guy that said this guy was terrific. Oh, I talked to one guy that said this guy was terrible. And you can always find those guys, right? And but you're asking real questions, trying to get answers, and yeah, you've gotten into it. I'm looking it up as you go, just to refresh it in my head. Again, his peak years, 1998 to 2007. Those are high run scoring years. So he slugs over 500. So if you look at it at face value, hey, wait a second. He was a good fielder. We know he's pretty good.
I'm not disputing that.
Nobody's saying he's not good. So we know he's good at least. But he slugged 500. So for 10 years. So to my mind, it's like, that's kind of saying he's in the Hall of Fame. His OPS plus, though, in that stretch is 115. It's like guys who drove in 140 runs in the Depression. It's like a lot of guys were doing that. It was being done because they were scoring so many runs. Now, find a guy who was hitting 340, nobody was, in 1968, 1969, 1970. Like, that's monstrous. That's like hitting 390 in any other era. So you have to take into context the run scoring. And I'm with you on the defense. I was watching, look, I was at ESPN in those days doing Baseball Tonight. I was watching a lot of baseball. I didn't go crazy for him the way you go crazy for, right, Brooks Robinson, Ozzie Smith. Like, there are guys that you want, Keith Hernandez. Like, I'll go to the wall on Keith Hernandez in defense. I'll go and anybody wants to tell me, it's like when you just weren't watching, you weren't watching closely. I'll go to the wall on Don Mattingly's defense. I have Hernandez a little better than Mattingly, but I also watch Mattingly a ton. He was a fantastic glove at first base, and I think the metrics job him. So I can do that for a lot of different players. And you've gone into the weeds on this, and I think you're onto something. I can still say I'm comfortable voting with him, but he's on the border.
He's on the border. Yeah. Exactly right. We don't want to spend the whole thing on Andruw Jones. Carlos Beltran, best of the first year candidates on this ballot, has a little asterisk, though, from the 2017 Astros. Do you think the 2017 Astros and his role in that sign stealing, specifically called out by Rob Manfred in his report, should be enough to keep Carlos Beltran out of the Hall of Fame?
I don't know. I know, I do think this, because having gone through the whole steroid era, where, again, for a long time now, we've wondered, like, where's the outrage for this? And we've seen an erosion of that outrage, right? I didn't anticipate that. The younger voters will kind of tell you, the millennials, guys who are just getting the vote now, will say, these guys were all cheating and they allowed it, and Bud Selig liked it. And it's like, wait, hold on a second. It was flat out considered cheating back then. Flat out was. Ben Johnson shamed 1988. So you're telling me in the mid 90s, it was the loosey-goosey era? No, it wasn't. It was loosey-goosey in a sense.
There are a lot of people doing it.
Wild West, but they were doing it, and there were a lot of guys not doing it. And yet it was considered cheating. It was considered wrong. If it was considered right, they would have talked about it. I use testosterone and it's fantastic. Like, they would have said that. They don't say it now. You can't say it now. So it was cheating. Now, I've never in baseball seen the outrage that there was for anything that there was for sign stealing. My prediction, it was fashionable to hate the Astros. It was fashionable to hate Jeff Luhnow. And when you had the weight of baseball, the commissioner, everybody, and then the players, the players never pipe in and hate on their fellow players. They hated the Astros. They were all, Yankees hated them. Dodgers hated them. Everybody hated them. It was fashionable. And there was a dog pile, and guys got fired. Guys got ostracized. Guys got banished. Beltran got banished. He had the job with the Mets and he got booted out. So I had the sense the whole time that when it comes to Beltran on the ballot, that outrage is actually not there. It was fashionable. People like to hate on them. And I think it barely dings him in this vote.
We're seeing from his vote total that the outrage is not there. He's going to be somewhere around 50%, maybe above 50%. And that surprises me. I mean, none of the equivalent
Doesn't surprise me at all.
PED guys in their first year got 40%. He's going to get 50. So that is telling us something. But I can tell you, he held up my ballot for over a week, trying to sort out what I wanted to do about this. I mean, I did all the work that showed.
So you said, is he on your ballot or no?
I voted for him.
You are voting. You did vote for him.
But
so where's your outrage?
Okay, well, I mean, it wasn't that hard to establish. This guy had a Hall of Fame career, and he'd already had it.
Yeah. Oh, no. By the way, I agree with you. There are a lot of people that, like, you have a very enlightened view, again, because you have to take into consideration he's playing center field. And you have to take into consideration he could field, he was a good base runner, he was an excellent postseason player. He's an excellent postseason. Oh yeah, but so was Bernie Williams, so was Jimmy Edmonds, so Kenny Lofton was a great fielder and base runner. They got lost in the sauce. I'm saying in the old, like, does he have 500 home runs? Where is he with his RBIs? How many MVPs did he win? He doesn't have that old stuff. I was heartened when it became like a thing that Carlos Beltran was a Hall of Famer. I'm like, this is good, because people are seeing the proper context of his total game, that he was that good. Of course, he's over the line. For us, I'm saying there'd be a lot of people that weren't there, but all I'm saying is, like, you don't ding him at all. So the sign stealing thing didn't bother you, which is fine. But I wonder, it seemed to bother so many people.
I mean, it wouldn't, if it didn't bother me, why did it take me over a week to decide I was going to vote?
You got over it.
I couldn't.
You got over it pretty quickly.
I had to sort through it. And I'll tell you, one of the quote that stuck with me was a quote from the piece in The Athletic that Ken Rosenthal and Evan Drellick wrote about Carlos Beltran and his role in that scandal, in which he got to the Astros and he said, you guys are behind the times on sign stealing, right? And so what is that telling us? He had been other places or knew of other places where they were already doing the stuff that the Astros then learned to do, except they threw trash cans in there.
Well, that's it. I think, I don't know, right? But watching the whole thing, we knew. I was, I've been at World Series. Remember the Dodgers-Astros World Series? There was whistling back and forth. If you were down low, and I happened to be down low, and I remember talking to, I forgot who I was talking to, probably Dave Roberts, and he was like, they were outraged. Bob Guerin was the bench coach, and like they would see the signs go in, the pitcher come to the set, and like that, and they'd be like, hold, time out, hold on, because they knew, wait, you're up to something. Now, there is a line. We know there is a legal part of that. And Carlos Beltran was considered the best at it. Part of his reputation that really was burnished in the latter part of his career was that he was so smart. He mentored the younger players. He taught them the nuances of the game. And I think, I like to think that the Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, the upper echelon smart teams with baseball ops, they were all doing things, but there was a line. And I think the Astros were the most developed, the most aggressive, and the smartest. And they had enough people in there that I think they went that next step.
They did.
And they went there. And Beltran was a pivotal figure in that. So do I want to punish the guy forever? Jayson, I don't want to punish anybody forever. Would I ding him for 1 year? I think John Heyman has, I think, a very good vote. He said, because I think there's something to still in this day and age to being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Eventually, Carlos Beltran should be honored. I don't want to ding him forever. I don't want to ding Pete Rose forever, actually. I don't want to punish anybody for their whole lives. But I think 1 year sends a proper message.
See, I think that's what's happening. It's going to work out fine for him, but I have a philosophy that I've learned the hard way, that if you say to yourself, well, I think this guy's a Hall of Famer, but he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, so I won't vote for him this year. And then all 400 other voters say that.
True.
There's no second year.
That's
so
true.
I'm not going to be that guy. All right, we could talk Hall of Fame like for hours. Before we go, I want to ask you about the top 10 right now shows, which you are doing. I guess they started 3 weeks ago. They're going for another couple of weeks.
I think another week
like that.
Yeah.
And I participated in this for the first time in the Right Fielder Show. And I knew it was hard to come up with these lists. I never realized how hard it was until I had to do it. And I put in hours for what I think was a 4-minute segment. Okay. And I thought it would be the names at the top that really burned my brain cells. It really is figuring out.
It's 9, 10, and who's not.
Who you're leaving
off. Right.
So this is what you find from doing them all these years?
Yeah. I've become, I don't know if you've noticed, I've become much less strident about it, but I think there's a fascinating dynamic happening where, and I alluded to it today when John Morosi had like Mark Burley and Torrey Hunter. And when he said, I have Hunter on my ballot, and I go, Torrey Hunter? Like, I just didn't know. Like, I'm not used to hearing that. Good. Somebody should take a flyer on this guy. Somebody should make a case for. And I found on all of our lists, there's a homogenization of thought. There is a groupthink at work. We're all the shredder now. It used to be controversial. Top 10 right now. Maybe it's marginally controversial here or there, but the shredder used to be wildly controversial. And now, no matter who it is, if it's Carlos Pena, Sean Casey, Ron Darling, whoever comes in, like essentially their list is the same. And actually, like now even Bob Costas and Mad Dog have a similar list. And I want someone make a case for someone.
I did that.
Who did you make a case?
Lars Nootbaar.
Lars Nootbaar, good. Excellent. Good. Come on. But my even thing was like, I thought I was taking a stand by not having Garrett Cole in my top 10. But
that
then
is a stand.
But nobody had Garrett Cole in their top 10.
Wow.
And I thought, hey, somebody should. Like, yeah, the metrics aren't there. Don't like the cut of his jib. There's all sorts of things. But hold on. At the end of next year, what's the probability or possibility that we'll be saying, what a great year by Garrett Cole, top 3 in Cy Young, and he's easily one of the top 10 of the game. Like, it's a very good possibility or probability that that'll be the case. Yeah. Someone should take a flyer on him. Someone should make a case for Christian Yelich. Nobody would. It's like somebody should, like Cody Bellinger. Somebody should make a case for Cody Bellinger in the top 10. And a few did. Like I slipped him in at 10. A few people did. You could, that's where your wild card pick goes. But there is like it's not, I don't know, it's disturbing, but again, what Sabermetrics was supposed to be about? Critical thinking. And not just a group think. And I think we've all come up with the same way of thinking. We're coming up with essentially the same lists. And have we all just gotten smart, or are we all just thinking the same way?
Well, there's a lot more information now to help you build those lists, but there is too much groupthink. And this, I wanted to ask you about the shredder. There really is such a thing as that shredder.
We have a proprietary formula. And the best thing about the shredder is also the worst thing about the shredder is that the shredder we do not change. That's one thing. I work with the researchers. We don't make exceptions. We don't say, what?
You can't manipulate the shredder.
No,
Get somebody
no.
on there.
Well,
That's
that's it.
really
Or get someone off. If you get a bad result, no. There's no bad result. There's the result. And we've done that. Now, I think we've changed like the sample size for relief pitching because it's so volatile. We made a change on that. I think we've also in the past few years gone to Fangraphs WAR for catching because it uses a framing component. We just thought that was better. We do things that we think are better. I think the shredder uses like a 3-year sample, but it weights the more recent more. I got rid of 2020 because it was a weird year. Obviously, it's a 2-month season. It's a strange pandemic year. So I got rid of that, but the shredder doesn't. But again, the shredder will sometimes, again, the shredder's strength is it doesn't care about all your little machinations. The numbers are the numbers, and this is it. Now, from there, we should be better than the shredder. We should be able to look at the shredder's numbers and say, yes, but, yes, and, or there's a couple of players on there where a 3-year sample is just the worst thing you can do to a guy. Because actually a 1-year sample is great. A 4-year sample where you get his great 2019 is in, and you can do that.
And it's the top 10
The shredder
right now.
Yeah.
So you have to be thinking ahead. How does the shredder?
You're projecting for next year. Right.
I'm just happy to hear that the shredder is as all powerful as I've always dreamed it to be.
No emotion, no bias, no tinkering. We do not tinker with the shredder. What it spits out, it spits out.
Does it do any actual shredding? I could bring some up.
That's
I got a big box of shredding.
Do you have any classified documents near your Corvette? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, no, it does not shred. Yeah. Good answer.
Ryan, I love hanging around Cooperstown with you. We'll be doing it all week. The Hall of Fame selection show, announcement show. Is that what we're
I think it's called an announcement show. Yes. The official announcement for Writers Pal.
Eastern on Tuesday, MLB Now, 2 to 4 Tuesday, 2 to 3 Wednesday. You, me, John Paul Morosi. It's so much fun to be here doing this show. So please join us for that. Thanks for listening to me and Brian do our thing on the Hall of Fame. We've been doing it for 20 something years. It never gets tired.